set this up. Okay. Surah Al-Alaq. I mean, a lot of us grew up with this surah. A lot of us probably have this surah memorized as well. But a lot of us don't know the history behind this surah. And maybe you guys might know a famous story of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he was in the cave of Hira and Angel Jibreel alayhi salam came with the first revelation. This is precisely that surah. But I'm hoping that today, through this class of the Tadabburul Quran, what does Tadabbur mean? Tadabbur means to ponder, to think. And its Tadabbur is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has required all Muslims to do. Whether you are a scholar, whether you are a layperson, whether you're a housewife, whether you're a working woman, whether you're a student, whether you are a man, whether you are educated, whether you're uneducated, doesn't matter who you are. Tadabbur, thinking, pondering about the verses of Allah has been commanded on all Muslims and all humans, in fact. A lot of places in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks us to ponder, to think about the verses. And unfortunately, we don't. We read the verses, we recite the verses, but and a lot of us, we even like learn the tafsir of the verses, to be very honest. A lot of us probably have attended tafsir classes before, or some sort of Quran class before where we look at the words or look at the meaning, and probably some of us have read tafsir as well. A lot of times when I invite people for the tafsir of the Quran programs, you know what they say to me? Oh, but we read translation. We have read the translation. And subhanAllah, for those of you who have attended this class before, you guys can attest that translations do not do justice to the word of Allah. What is a translation? A translation is my understanding of what that word means. I am guessing that the people who we have in this class, you are all bilingual, right? Bilingual means you know more than one language. Can you truly translate something you say in your own language, in English language? Can you truly translate emotions in English language? You can't. The way you maybe scold or yell at your child in your own language, or the way you joke or make jokes in your own language, it is very hard to translate those humor, translate those proverbs, those famous sayings in a different language. When you translate, it loses its meaning, right? Same thing, let's say the examples of songs, let's say, or poetry. What happens? It's very hard to translate a poetry in Urdu, let's say, to translate it in English. It blows it out of proportion. Quran, the Arabic language used in the Quran, is the most highest form of balagha. By balagha, I mean like the highest peak of the language. Like I don't want to give the comparison to Shakespearean, but Shakespearean English is very different from the daily language of English language, right? So Arabic in the Quran has been used in a very poetic style as well, which is why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was accused of being a poet. In the Quran, it is mentioned that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was often mocked and teased by the people of Mecca that he's a poet, or he is a majnoon who goes into these seizures, who goes into these epileptic attacks, and by doing so, then he comes up with these random words that are so beautiful. Na'udhu billah. They did blame Rasulullah for this. Why? Because Quran's language was so beautifully done. So my point of all of this is that the reason this class is named Tadabbur al-Quran is that we're not just going to do the translation. We're not just going to do the tafsir. We're going to try to ponder and think about the verses as commanded to us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I feel this is the link that is missing in a lot of the things that we try to do. Okay. Now, Surah Al-Alaq is a surah and we discussed this in the last class, in our first class in Surah Al-Alaq. We did first 5 verses, but I will go over them briefly. And I'll share with my screen here. My apologies for the, oh, this is not right. Can everyone see the screen though? Just write down the message, please, if you can. Okay, alhamdulillah. So the first five verses that we see here, these were the first revelation. And I'll just briefly cover them because we've already covered them in last class. They came to Rasulullah when he was in the cave of Hira. Now the question comes, and I want you to think about this. What was Rasulullah doing in cave of Hira? He was not a prophet at that time. Why would he go to cave of Hira? He was a community leader. We know that. Rasulullah was how old was he? 40 years old when Nabuwa came on him, right? He was a community worker. He was a visionary of his time even before prophethood, even before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made him a prophet. So he would go to cave of Hira because he disassociated himself from whatever the people of Makkah would do at certain times, the kinds of parties they would do, the kinds of injustice they would do. His heart would become very heavy. He did not like it. When people of Makkah would worship multiple idols in Makkah, Rasulullah did not like it. So Rasulullah was never a polytheist. He was never someone who worshipped more than one God. You have to know this because Nabuwa came on Rasulullah at the age 40. What was he before then? He was a Hanif. A Hanif is someone who always believed in oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He was destined to be a prophet, but he had not become a prophet until then. He became a prophet in the cave of Hira when the first revelation came to him in the form of the first 5 verses. Now, he disassociated himself. Why would Rasulullah disassociate himself from his community and go to cave of Hira in seclusion? We know in our deen that Rahbaniyat, you know what Rahbaniyat is? Like secluding yourself, like what Christians monks do, and go live in outskirts or in jungles. That's not allowed. You can't leave the dunya and go live in the wild. That's not allowed for us. We have to live in the dunya and implement the deen. But it is recommended to us to take some breaks from society. And we see that in the life of Rasulullah that he did take some breaks, mental breaks, spiritual breaks from the society when he went to cave of Hira. And then we take these mental and spiritual breaks in the form of itikaf in the month of Ramadan. Right? So we do go through this yearly practice of excluding ourselves from the glamour of the world. जैसे दुनिया की रौनकों से आप थोड़ा सा अपने आप को आपको दूर करना पड़ता है to make yourself focus. For example, if a child has an exam, right? What do we tell them? That बेटा distractions कम कर लें, फोन रख दे, ठीक है, ये तो आपके पास रहेगा, बस ये एक हफ्ता थोड़ी मेहनत करके फोकस करके पढ़ाई कर लो, right? We say these things to them. Why? Because we want them to focus on their studies. Just like when you want to focus on the deen, when you want to focus on the world, and when you want to focus on improvement of the world, the people of good heart and people of intellect often exclude themselves or seclude themselves from the busyness of the world to ponder, to think. Great scientists, great historians, great people in the world in the past have done so. And after recovering themselves and making them strong, they come out. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even though he was known to be Sadiq and Amin, even before he became the prophet, we also know that as a fact. There were 2 names given to him by his community, that he is Sadiq, the most truthful, and Amin, the most trustworthy. He's already married to Khadija radiallahu anha at this time, right? Khadija radiallahu anha married him because she got impressed by his sidq and his truthfulness and his trustworthiness, right? So we know all of this. He's well known in the community that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is a good man. Everybody knows him. People trust him. People love him. He's always helpful to the community. He's already doing that. He's doing his best. Yet, he takes a break from his community and goes to the cave of Hira, because whatever he does, ulama say that whatever he does, he felt that it was not enough. The community was still not changing. The community was still not moving. And I believe that a lot of people who work for the deen of Allah sometimes go through this, that they try their best to do programs that people don't show up, right? They try their best to do certain things, but it doesn't go as planned. That is the reality of the world. And that is what Rasulullah was experiencing. And he excluded himself because he wanted to stay away from all of the glamour. And he went to Cave of Hira to focus, to ponder. Who was he? Was he worshiping someone? Yes. He was contemplating how I can improve my society. What do I do? And his focus had always been like, there is one power, there's one God. And in that moment of contemplation comes Jibreel alayhi salam. That is the point. This surah is the point that changed the course of history. This is the start of Muslim civilization. This is the start of Rasulullah as we know of. And what did Jibreel alayhi salam say? We know the famous story again, that read, iqra. What is the first word? You can see this here. What did Rasulullah say? Iqra. Now Jibreel alayhi salam is commanding him to say, read. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam did not know how to read. So he replies, I don't know how to read. Jibreel says again, read. He replies, I don't know how to read. From this, the ulama say that because the command of reading is coming, it is highly possible that Jibreel alayhi salam probably had something in his hand, a tablet with Iqra bismi rabbika allazi khalaq written on it. Why do they say that? Because if by reading, like for example, if I tell you read after me or recite after me, you would recite after me, right? Or if I say repeat what I say, you don't need something to see for you to read, right? You will repeat after me. But the fact that Rasulullah replied, I do not know how to read, meant he was looking at something because he could not actually read. He could repeat the words, but he could not read what was written. So from that, ulama has deduced, right? They have unka andaza hai, they've deduced this, that there was something in the physical form with Jibreel alayhi salam, which Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam could not read. So Jibreel alayhi salam says, read. And then he grabs him by the chest and says, Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. And then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam understands it to be that he's asking me to repeat after him, and he repeats. And then we know that after this first 5 verses were revealed, he comes running to Khadija radiallahu anha, and he's shivering, he's scared, he doesn't know what's going to happen, he thinks he's probably going to die. These are the words that we find from the Sunnah. Khadija radiallahu anha again wraps him up, comforts him, and then she takes him to Warqa bin Nawfal, who is her cousin, and then Warqa bin Nawfal, explains to him that this must be the same angel that came to the prophets before. That means that you have going to become a prophet, and that means that your people are going to kick you out. When Warqa bin Nawfal says that, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is really surprised, because he is, remember I talked about that he was a very well-beloved member of the community. People loved him. People adored Rasulullah. People only became the enemy of Rasulullah after he started giving the message of Islam, right? People will love you as long as you help them. But the moment you try to tell them that they're doing something wrong, they're going to start hating on you. That's the reality. Nobody likes to be criticized. Nobody likes to be told that you're doing something wrong. So the moment Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam takes on the role of this fatherly figure, he takes on the role of this community leader where he is trying to rectify his community, people become against him. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is surprised, and he goes to Warqa bin Nawfal. Seriously, like my people will kick me out? The people who love me so much, these people, my own people, will kick me out? And Warqa bin Nawfal said, yes, indeed, they will. And he was an old man at that time, and he said, I wish that I can be alive when this happens to you, Ya Rasulullah, because I will give you my full support when this happens. Obviously, Warqa bin Nawfal did not stay alive when that time came. And but we know that he died probably professing his acknowledgement of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as Prophet of Allah. Now we covered the 5 verses here, in which I will repeat. Iqra, read. Bismi, in the name. Rabbika, your Lord. Alladhi, the one who khalaqa, he has created. What has he created? Read in the name of your Lord who has created. We learned in last class that Bismi, ba, could be translated as read in the name of your Lord, and it could be translated as read with the name of your Lord. What is the difference? Meaning, when you begin something, you begin it with the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when you read in the name of Allah, meaning everything that you read, everything that you gain, the ilm, comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You cannot separate the deen from even the sacred knowledge. The connection between Allah and the sacred knowledge has to be established. Allazi khalaqa, he created. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not specify what he created in the first ayah. We get the explanation of it in the second ayah. خلق الإنسان. خلق, he has created. What did he create? Al-insana, the human. He created the human. How? With what? Min, from. Alaq, a clot. He created the human from a clot. And we did the detail of alaq last class. So I'm not going to go into detail of this. Iqra, read. وَرَبُّكَ, and your Lord, Al-Akram, is the most generous. الَّذِي عَلَّمَ بِالْقَلَمِ, who has taught the man how? بِالْقَلَمِ, by the pen, with the pen. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has equated ilm with qalam. There's listening, there's watching, and then there's writing. When you pen something down, it becomes more permanent. When you just read, you're just reading for yourself. But when you pen something down, you write it down, now you can teach others with that as well. عَلَّمَ الْإِنسَانَ, he has taught the man مَا لَمْ يَعْلَمْ, whatever he did not know. Meaning all sorts of knowledge came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now after these 5 verses comes the story or the incident with which all these ayat were revealed. From ayah number 6 until the end of Surah Al-Alaq, this is referring to an incident between Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and a man that we know in history known as Abu Jahl. Okay? Who was Abu Jahl? Abu Jahl was actually, before I go to Abu Jahl, there's actually 3 staunch enemies of Islam. You can call them celebrity enemies of Islam. Okay? Yeah, you know how we know famous Sahaba like Khulafa Rashidin? Opposite to them, the 3 staunch enemies, celebrity enemies of Islam are 3 people. Abu Jahl, Abu Lahab, and Walid ibn Mughira. Now, Walid ibn Mughira was somebody who was a strategist. He is also referred in the Quran. Walid bin Mughira is mentioned in Surah Al-Qalam and Surah Al-Mudassir about him. But he wasn't really known to be a very good man, even in the Arab community. Abu Lahab, who was the uncle of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was actually known to be a very cheap and a coward man. So even people in the Arab society did not like these 2 people, Walid ibn Mughira and Abu Lahab. They were not well liked. They were rich. They had power, but they were not well liked rich people. Abu Lahab was so coward that in the Battle of Badr, he actually hired people to go fight in the battle on behalf of him. He didn't even go fight by himself. So he was known to be a very coward and a very cheap guy. Abu Jahl, on the other hand, was something different. Abu Jahl was very well liked, very well loved by the Arab community. He was almost the same age as Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Interesting fact, by the way. And in fact, when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Abu Jahl were actually young, they had a bit of a riffraff in which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam pushed him down, and Abu Jahl fell on the ground, in which he scraped his knee. So he actually had a scar on his knee, a permanent scar on his knee from the time of his teenage age with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Abu Jahl was from, both Abu Jahl and Rasulullah are from Quraysh, the big tribe. But in the Quraysh tribe, there were other multiple family tribes. So there was a family of Banu Hashim and Banu Amir. Abu Jahl was from a different family tribe, which was Banu Amir, and Rasulullah was from Banu Hashim. But both Banu Amir and Banu Hashim belonged to Quraysh. So big umbrella tribe was Quraysh, and there's many tribes under that. And there was always a competition. Both of these tribes always would compete, Banu Hashim and Banu Amir. So Abu Jahl was known as Abu al-Hakam. Abu means father, Jahl means ignorance. So in Islam, we call him Abu Jahl because he's the father of ignorance, because he rejected Islam. But his real name was Amr bin Hashim. Okay? Amr bin Hashim was his actual real name. And Amr bin Hashim, he became known as Abu al-Hakam, the father of wisdom, actually, before Islam, because he was a wise guy. People loved talking to him. People loved coming to him for advice. In fact, his ranks became so high that he started sitting with the chieftains and the big tycoons of Quraysh. He started sitting with those big councils of where people pass judgments. He was part of that, and he was the youngest amongst them, and people were like, hey, this guy's intelligent. He's a bright, shining star. We want him in our council. So Abu Jahl rose into the ranks of power very quickly in a very early age because of his wisdom and how well liked he was. He was also a very generous guy. Okay? He was very generous. He was very helpful as well. Again, you can see some similarities here. So by Arab standards, he was most noble. And in the Battle of Badr, he actually fought himself as well. And in the Battle of Badr, you can understand that how much pride he had in himself, that when his neck was about to be cut, he told the Sahabi who was about to cut his neck that please cut my neck a little bit lower, so when you hang it on the spike, it raises above than other heads, so people can see this is the head of a leader. That's how much chivalry he had in him. Okay, so by Arab standards, not Islamic standards, he was a very brave and generous and well-liked guy. You can understand how well-liked he was that Rasulullah ﷺ actually made dua for Abu Jahl. He actually made, and at that time, Umar ibn al-Khattab, who was one of our Khalifa, Umar ibn al-Khattab, everybody knows this name. Umar ibn al-Khattab was also not a Muslim at that time. And Amr bin Hashim, Abu Jahl, Rasulullah ﷺ would look at both of them, and he would say that he would refer to the similarities between Umar ibn al-Khattab and Amr bin Hashim. And he would make dua. We have this dua in the seerah. He would make this dua, a famous dua, that Ya Allah, give me one of the Amr. Either give me Umar ibn al-Khattab or give me Umar bin Hashim. Make one of these Umar Muslim. So we can understand that this guy had a lot of potential. That even Rasulullah saw the potential in him, that if this guy, Amr bin Hashim, becomes Muslim, he will be a force to reckon with. But he lost that potential. We learned in Surah At-Tin, for those of you who attended Surah At-Tin session, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ. We have made the human in أحسن تقويم, in the best of the forms. ثُمَّ رَدَدْنَاهُ أَسْفَلَ السَّافِلِينَ. Then he returns himself to the lowest of the low. This is the case of Abu Jahl. He was أحسن تقويم, but he became lowest of the lowest أسفل سافلين, because of the actions he did. Now, before I go into the story, let's look at the ayah. Ayah number 6. Kalla, nay. Inna, indeed. Al-insan, indeed the man. La yatgha. Indeed the man is what? La yatgha, he surely transgresses. La, that you see here, is surely. It is added to give emphasis to the meaning. Okay? Lam of ta'keed. This is referred to lam of ta'keed. Yatgha, transgresses. What is yatgha? Transgression. What does that mean? Yatgha comes out of the root letters ta, ghain, and ya, from tughyan. What is taghi and tughyan? Tughyan and taghi, or atgha, means that when something goes out of the boundaries, something crosses the boundaries. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that indeed human beings surely cross boundaries. What boundaries? The boundaries of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nobody likes to be limited, right? If you notice, the first 5 ayat talk about seeking knowledge, okay? And a lot of people don't seek knowledge because they don't like to be bounded. Often I've heard people say that I don't want to learn the deen because then I'll have to follow it and then I will be bounded. If I don't know, then I'm good. The reality is, if you don't learn, then you're still screwed. You're screwed both ways. So you might as well learn. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving an answer that why do people not learn? Because they like to transgress. They like to be out of bounds. The bounds that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has stretched out. They like to be out of the parameters. They don't like to be controlled. A lot of people who don't believe in Allah, who don't believe in an organized religion, why do they not believe in an organized religion? Because they don't like the religious laws. A lot of people who are atheists or antagonists, what do they say? That, yeah, we'll believe in spirituality, we'll believe in a spiritual higher power, but you know what? Religion messes things up. Why? Because religion puts laws on you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts bounds on you. And the thing is, humans cannot survive without boundaries and rules and regulations and responsibilities. If we get rid of traffic laws today, what will happen to the society? Chaos. If we just get rid of one law. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts bounds on us, we freak out, right? Because humans like to be without laws. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then gives a reason. Why do people don't like, why do people like to be in tughyan? Why do people like to go out of the bounds? And because ra'ahu, he considers, the man considers, I mean this insan, he considers, this is referring to this insan, he considers himself. What does he consider himself? Istaghna, self-sufficient. Istaghna comes out of the root letters ghain, noon, and ya. Ghain, noon, and ya is from ghani. Ghain, noon, and ya, ghani. Who is ghani? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What does ghani mean? Ghani means somebody who doesn't need anyone, who doesn't need any help, who doesn't need any assistance, who is literally not in need of anything, who is independent. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who is independent. We are all dependent on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in some way or the other. Even the ones who don't believe in Allah, we are dependent on each other. As humans, we are dependent on each other. If we have to make one food, let's say all of you probably made dinner today. Let's say if you have to make pasta or biryani today, can you truly be ghani in making it? Let's say you don't believe in the laws of Allah for a second. Fine, I'll give you that. The man does not believe in the laws of Allah because a man thinks that he does not need Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let's say for a moment, let's say you don't believe that, and that is true. You don't need religion, you don't need God, you don't need the laws of Allah for a moment. But are you truly self-sufficient? Is any one of us truly independent? We're not. Even to cook a food, the ingredients that you will have to find there's so many hands and so many people who were involved in creating those or providing those for you. The spices that you use came from different parts of the world. Different people got involved. Like maybe thousands and thousands and thousands of people got involved in you making one dish of biryani. Are you truly self-sufficient? No matter how much rich you get, okay? If one artery of yours gets blocked, are you able to cleanse it out without the assistance of other people? No. So in every affair of ours, we are dependent. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "An ra'ahu istaghna." The man considers himself self-sufficient. He thinks he doesn't need anyone. Inna, surely. Ila rabbika. Ila, to. Ila means towards. Rabbika, your. Ka here means your. Indeed, to your Rabb. Indeed, to your Lord. Ar-ruja'a is the return. How can you consider yourself self-sufficient when for your daily needs, you are returning to Allah without realizing? For your daily needs even, you are accessing what Allah has created. And then in a literal sense, how can you be in disbelief? How can you continue to disobey Allah when you will return physically, spiritually, in every form to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Ruja'a from raja'a, return. We all know that no matter how much rich we get, we're going to die. Right? There is no escape from death. Inna ila rabbika ruja'a. We will be returned to Allah. Now, after explaining that what causes the man to transgress, Allah gives us the story and the example of the man, starting from ayah number 9 until the end, the incident of the man who did tughyan. Who is that man? Abu Jahl. What is the story here? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was commanded to pray. Okay? He's commanded to pray. So a couple of incidents happened, not just one incident before this. Now, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam starts praying in front of Kaaba, and Abu Jahl is sitting around Kaaba with his thugs, with his people who are bigging him up. And Rasulullah starts prostrating, and then he threatens Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay? He continues to pray. The moment Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam goes into sujood, he asks one of the people in his crowd, there were about 7 of the people sitting with him. He asks them, who will go and grab the skin of the camel that we slaughtered today? It's sitting nearby. Who amongst you is man enough? Who amongst you is man enough to go and grab that skin and put on top of this guy who is praying right here? Let's teach him a lesson. So one of his thugs, he's like, I'll go. You know, men sitting up together, bigging each other up. Hey, you gonna do it? Are you gonna do it? Are you man enough to do that? So they're having this debate. So this guy goes, grabs the skin, and the skin had the intestines and all the nastiness left after the slaughter, all the slime and the blood and all of that on it. And he brings that skin and drops it on Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he is in sujood. Now it was so heavy that Rasulullah could not get up. And all these 7 of them start laughing. They're having a blast. And a couple of people also saw this happening, but they didn't have the courage to come and help because they were afraid for their own life, because all the 7 people were big thugs, you know, big macho bodyguards of Abu Jahl. Until the news reached to Fatima radiallahu anha. Fatima radiallahu anha, the daughter of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was maybe like 6 or 7 years old at that time. She comes running to Kaaba, and she pushes, this little girl is pushing the skin off her father and starts cleaning it and, like, you know, to prevent it from it. And then she gets up, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam get up, and he looks at these people of Quraysh, these 7 people. And this is one of the times, there's very few times where Rasulullah actually cursed anyone. This is one of the times when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam cursed Abu Jahl. And he said, looking at the 7 people, and he said, "Oh Allah, deal with the Quraysh. Deal with them." And he didn't just stop there. Then he pointed and said the name of each and every 7 of those people who were standing there and laughing. He mentioned each of their names, and he said, "Ya Allah, deal with him, 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 and deal with him." And how did Allah deal with them? Right away? Did a lightning strike and the punishment come right away? No. That is not the sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He accepted the dua of Rasulullah. And then he avenged Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the Battle of Badr. The 7 people that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam pointed at and asked Allah to deal with them, Allah dealt with them in Battle of Badr, and all 7 of them were executed in the Battle of Badr brutally. Then another incident happened. This guy didn't stop because no punishment came right after him, right? You know, people become adamant on sin when no punishment comes. For example, if you steal something and nobody catches you, you become brave, right? Then you steal again. No punishment comes, then you become brave again. You steal again until you get caught. If you remove the fear of Allah, and if you remove that Allah is watching you, right? Or if you remove that somebody's watching me, if there's a CCTV camera, of course, the thief is not going to steal anymore because he knows somebody's watching me, right? So if you remove the watching part, right, you become, yay, nobody's watching me and I'm not getting caught. I might as well keep doing. So this is what happens with sins, right? So Abu Jahl, when he didn't get caught, nobody rebuked him. Everybody laughed with him. Everybody praised, "Oh yeah, good job. You taught Muhammad a lesson." He became brave again. So he did another time. Another incident happened. Prophet ﷺ is standing in Qiyam. Okay, now he's praying again in front of Kaaba. He's praying in Qiyam. I mean, all these stories, by the way, they are in the Seerah. You can all access Seerah and study it, inshallah. I'm not making this up. So I just wanted to clarify that. So another incident happened. The Prophet ﷺ is standing in his Qiyam. He tells Uqba. Uqba is also, he was one of the thugs. Uqba was actually the one who threw the camel skin on Rasulullah. So he tells Uqba that, hey, grab a shawl and just choke this guy. So Uqba grabs a shawl, and while Rasulullah is in Qiyam, he throws it on Rasulullah's face and neck and wraps it around and tries to twist him. Subhanallah al-Azim. Can any one of us imagine someone doing this to us? Rasulullah still did not stop praying. A lot of times we give up salah because how can I pray outside? How can I pray in the mall? People are watching. We give up our deen by just the looks of people, out of the fear of the looks of people. Rasulullah, the most respected man, he got the intestines of camel thrown at him. People tried to choke him while he was praying. Yet he did not stop praying. A food for thought for all of us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us punctual in our salah. No matter where we are, we should not abandon salah. If you take one thing away from today's lesson, it's that. Then another incident happened. So now these 2 incidents have already happened. So Abu Jahl is feeling like, hey, nobody can catch me. I'm just going to keep threatening this guy until he learns a lesson. Now, when this 3rd incident happens, that's when these ayat get revealed. And the 3rd incident is this. He sees Rasulullah praying, and he threatens him that, hey, if I catch you praying one more time, when you will go in sujood, I'm going to put my foot on your neck and crush your head. He threatens Rasulullah with this. Does Rasulullah stop? Now imagine if somebody threatened us with this kind of a threat. I was pondering on this, and I was thinking, if somebody threatened me with this, or my child, or anybody, I would probably, I don't know what I would do. Right? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never put us in a situation like that. But again, food for thought for us. What would I have done? if I was threatened like this, especially in today's time when you want to speak the truth, but you're afraid of the consequences. So Rasulullah obviously did not care for it. When prayer time came, he went to pray. Now, Abu Jahl and his people, his friends who were always hanging out with him, like Abu Jahl never hung out alone, right? He always had this people who were like chilling with him. People liked hanging out with him. So they passed by, and one of them, hey, look, Abu Jahl, look, this guy's praying. You made a promise. Remember the other day you said you'll crush his neck? Abu Jahl is like, oh yeah, time has come for me to teach this guy the final lesson. Na'udhu billah. He gets close to Rasulullah, and the other people start seeing Abu Jahl running backwards, meaning he's running backwards and he's looking at something. It looked like he was looking at something and pushing that thing with his hands. So imagine he's running backwards while pushing his hands towards something to push something away from him. And he comes back to his crowd all flustered. So his friends are like, dude, what happened? What happened? I thought you were going to crush his neck. What were you running away from? We didn't see anything. And Abu Jahl said that when I got close to Rasulullah, I saw a big ditch of fire and a treacherous and scary looking creature was coming out of that fire to grab me. So I got scared. And Rasulullah mentioned in the hadith that had he come close to him, the fire would have engulfed him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have, like the angels would have completely destroyed him. So this is when this ayat got revealed. Now you know the background. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, Ara'ayta, have you seen? Alladhi, the one who. Have you seen the one who? Yanha, he prevents. He prevents. Who is he preventing? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not mentioning the direct name of Abu Jahl. Whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to rebuke someone, in the Quran we see that he uses a third person, he. Have you seen the one who prevents? What does he prevent? Abdan, a slave. Idha, when Salah, he prays. Have you seen the one who stops a slave of mine from praying? Have you seen the audacity of this man who does that? He's forbidding, he's torturing, he's making it difficult for an abd of mine. When, on top of that, when he's praying, subhanallah. Ara'ayta, have you seen? In if kana, he is ala on al-huda guidance. Meaning, have you seen? Meaning, what if this person who's stopping was on guidance? Meaning, if Abu Jahl was on guidance, أو أمر بالتقوى, or he enjoined with taqwa. Now, ulama state that these two ayat, أرأيت الذي ينهى عبدا إذا صلى, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is rhetorically asking this question, referring to Abu Jahl, that have you seen, like by physically, it doesn't really mean physically seen, but means like the seeing of like perception, the eye of perception. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is confirming the dua of Rasulullah here by saying that, yeah, have you seen if the potential this person had he used this potential for hidayah, or he had enjoined with taqwa? Because when Rasulullah made the dua for Umar ibn al-Khattab or Amr bin Hashim, he asked Allah, oh Allah, give me one of the two Umars. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepted the dua and gave Umar ibn al-Khattab. Umar ibn al-Khattab became the Muslim. And when Umar ibn al-Khattab became Muslim, he became someone on guidance, and he became someone who started doing amara bit taqwa. He started giving commands of taqwa as well. Now, there are two opinions in this. Some ulama say that this ayat are also referring to Abu Jahl, and it's confirming what Rasulullah had anticipated about Abu Jahl, or these two ayat are referring to Rasulullah, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is further elaborating on the abd. The abd is the one, have you seen this abd who is actually on guidance, and he is the one who is giving and joining with taqwa. This person is stopping the person Abu Jahl is stopping who? From what? To do something good? So it's a rhetorical way of rebuking him, of ek tarah se dant is there in there, right? Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues to say, أَرَأَيْتَ إِن كَذَّبَ وَتَوَلَّى. أَرَأَيْتَ. Have you seen? In كَذَّبَ. If he denies, وَتَوَلَّى, and turns away. Meaning this person, if he continues, he's continuing to deny, and he's continuing to turn away. About Abu Jahl, let me tell you the story. This ayah is referring to another story. And what is that story? When Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would give, he started preaching. Obviously, Abu Jahl was very against it, and he saw that how young people were, coming to Islam, and he did not like it. But he was an intelligent guy. He was curious. He wanted to know what is it in this Quran. So one night he snuck out and he went to the apartment of the hujra of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he hid behind a wall to listen to the Quran being recited. Interestingly, while Abu Jahl was doing this, Abu Sufyan, who was not a Muslim at that time, and Akhnas bin Shuraiq, Ibn Shuraiq, he also was there. So all three of them hid behind the three separate walls of Rasulullah's house. And all three of them did not see each other, and they stayed all night listening to the Quran. They were so mesmerized by the Quran. Okay? They stayed all night there. And then right around the dawn time, when they come out of their walls, they all encounter each other, and they are like, oh, embarrassed. They're like, oh, what are you doing here? He's like, what are you doing here? And the other person, what are you doing here? And they're like, hey, I just came here to listen so I can have arguments against him when I talk to people. So they all three told each other, hey, don't tell anyone that you came here tonight, because people of light mind, they might get inspired and they might come to listen to the Quran too. And this word is too powerful. We cannot have our young youth knowing that we come and listen as well. Okay. Next night, same thing happens. Third night, same thing happens. They all promise each other, we're not going to come and listen to the Quran, but they keep coming back to it. Until the third night, Akhnas talks to Abu Sufyan. And Akhnas says to Abu Sufyan, or Abu Sufyan says to Akhnas, one of the two. And he says, what do you think of this Quran? What do you think of this message of Rasul? Abu Sufyan says, it sounds very compelling. Let's talk to Abu Jahl. So they go to Abu Jahl and they say, hey, Abu Jahl, what's your opinion of this Quran? What's your opinion of this guy? And Abu Jahl says, by Allah, he is speaking the truth. By Allah, he is speaking the truth, but I cannot accept him. Because how can I accept him? He is from Banu Hashim. I am from Banu Amir. We compete in everything. We compete. When they give wealth, we give wealth. When they are generous, we are generous. When they fight, we fight equally to them. Now Banu Hashim has produced a prophet who gets divine revelations from the sky. How can my tribe, Banu Amir, compete with this? If I were to accept Muhammad today, Banu Amir will perish. That will be the end of my tribe, and I cannot let that happen. So he knew the truth, yet he denied. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ara'ayta, have you seen? In kadhaba, that he denies. Watawalla, and then he turns away. He didn't just deny, he kept vehemently denying and turning other people away as well. Alam ya'lam. Did he not see? Remember I told you ya'lam, he knows, and when lam is added, it gives a together meaning. Alam ya'lam, did he not know, or does he not know? Bi anna Allah yara, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is seeing everything. Whatever he's plotting, whatever he's doing, bi anna Allah, indeed Allah, yara, he sees, he watches. Just because he does not punish you right away doesn't mean he's not watching. Kalla, kalla, nay. Kalla, definitely. Nay, la'in, if. Surely if. La, again, la, harf ta'kid. La'in, surely if. Lam yantahi, he does not cease. Lam yantahi, if he does not stop. If Abu Jahl does not stop with whatever he's doing, لَنَسْفَعًا, surely, surely, نَسْفَعًا, we, na is we, سَفْعَ is catch him. Nasfa comes out from the root letters sin, fa, and ain. It literally means to grab something with such force that you uproot it. Okay? Safa is to grab something with such force that it uproots it. Now, what is the meaning given here? We will catch him. Now you tell me, do the translations give justice to the beauty of Arabic language? No, they don't. Surely we will catch him, we'll grab him with such mighty force. How? Bin nasuya, by the forelock. Nasuya is your forehead. The hair on your forehead, right at the edge of forehead. And something interesting about nasuya is that we know that cognitive thinking, all of that cognitive thinking happens, the executive functioning is in the part of the head that is behind the forehead. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying this head that he's so proud of, we will surely grab him bin nasiya, from the foreleg with the force. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, what kind of nasiya, what kind of forehead he has? Nasiya, a forelock. Kadhiba, a lying. He lies. He lies about Rasulullah. He lies about the Quran. Nasiyatan kadhiba, a lying forehead. Khati'a, a sinful forehead. Whose forehead is this referring to? The forehead of Abu Jahl. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes further and threatens him. فَلْيَدْعُ نَادِيًا. So let him call. فَلْيَدْعُ, call. So let him call. Nadia, his council. Let him call his people. He's always referring to his people, right? My people, my people, my people. He's always hanging out with his crowd. فَلْيَدْعُ نَادِيًا. Let him call his people. What will we do? Surely, surely, soon. سَنَدْعُ, surely we will call. Sanadu, we will call. Who? Az-Zabaniya, the guards, security guards. Az-Zabaniya is the plural of the word Zabniya. Zabniya in Arabic language is a security guard. So Zabaniya is the plural of Zabniya. So Sanadu Az-Zabaniya, we will surely call security guards. Who is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala referring to? The angels, the guards of hellfire. Because we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to the guards of hellfire as the angels of hellfire as guards of hellfire. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, let him call his people. I've got my people, and my people are much mightier than his people. So that was the banning. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to the Prophet, Kalla, forget it, let it be. Kalla, literally in Urdu, how we would say dafa karo. So kalla, nay, ignore it, let it be, Ya Rasulullah. Don't listen to him. La tuti'hu. Do not obey him. Let him do whatever he's doing. Do not listen to him. Do not change your course. What should you do, Ya Rasulullah? Wasjud. Continue to prostrate. Continue to do sajda. Wasjud. And waqtarib. And draw near to Allah. Two things are told. Two things. Wasjud. Waqtarib. You continue to pray your salah. You continue to do sajda. You continue to get close to Allah. Listen, ibadah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not just doing rituals, wasjud. We are told a second form, which is waqtarib. Waqtarib comes from the root letters qaf, ra, ba, qurb. From qurb, qareeb. Get near to Allah. How do you get near to Allah? By consistently doing sujood. And through the sujood, you become near to Allah. They are both related to each other. And we know this from ahadith, that the closest you are to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in the form of sujood. That is the closest form that we have to Allah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us amongst those who love doing sajda to Him. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us amongst those who are punctual in their salah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us His qurb. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us from the company of people like Abu Jahl. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us identify the potential we have. Abu Jahl failed to identify his potential and he wasted the wisdom Allah gave him in rejection of Allah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us utilize the wisdom He has given us, the qualities that He has given us, the skills that He has given us in His pursuit. May the ilm bring us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is a sajda tilawa here, so inshallah after this class, make sure you guys do sajda, inshallah ta'ala, sajda tilawa. I'm going to, inshallah, play the recitation of this ayat, and then I will open the mics for us to discuss for any questions, inshallah. So while the surah is being recited, please listen attentively and make sure your eyes are on the text. And then it's very important to look at the verses when they are being recited, because the meaning is fresh in our mind right now, inshallah ta'ala. Okay. And after the listening recitation, we'll do the tajweed session, inshallah. Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق خلق الإنسان من علق اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم بالقلم علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم كلا إن الإنسان ليطغى أن رآه استغنى إن إلى ربك الرجعى أرأيت الذي ينهى عبدا إذا صلى أرأيت إن كان على الهدى أو أمر بالتقوى أرأيت إن كذب وتولى ألم يعلم بأن الله يرى كلا لئن لم ينته لنسفعا بالناصية ناصية كاذبة خاطئة فليدع ناديه سندع الزبانية كلا لا تطعه واسجد واقترب
Okay, I think you guys can unmute yourselves now, inshallah. I've changed the settings. Okay. Any questions, any concerns before for those of you who have to leave, they can leave, inshallah. The tafsir session is done. For those who want to stay for the grammar and the tajweed portion, they can stay, inshallah, because that is what we will do at this point onwards. Are you guys able to unmute your mics or no?